Good morning and welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us this morning. If you are watching us live on Facebook, we appreciate that. If you're watching us later on Facebook, we appreciate that as well. If you are watching this later, we do record these shows, the audio and video versions, and upload them to www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast, and we appreciate you guys being here as well. Getting your traffic, usual traffic patterns this morning. You're looking at delays at 4H Club Road, River Road, and 190 in Denham Springs. You're also looking at delays at Range Avenue and 190, as well as 190 and Jubin Road. Not too bad this morning, just your normal delays as these essential folks go to work. Not a whole lot of school, though. Currently 50 degrees, so a cool front came through Sunday night. 72 degrees your high. Some sun, it's a little dreary this morning. Should be getting some sun later this afternoon. 47 degrees your overnight low. Now, before we jump into the coronavirus, going to mix it up a little bit as we have over the past couple of days. Started to get some outside news coming in. This time it's going to be about Mr. Jim Rathman and Woody Overton, the Real Life, Real Crime podcast guys. They are going to be taking on a new project. They had been working on a local, I guess you could say, a project, the Barbara Blunt case. A lot of you may know a Holden woman, Miss Blunt, went missing in the late 2000s, and it's kind of been an open case since the sheriff brings it up about once a year. Trying to help blow that case open. Well, with coronavirus and social distancing, they had reached a point where there had to be a lot of face-to-face interaction. Of course, that's just not going to happen. So during this time, they decided to jump back into, I guess you could say, the case of the missing man, Don Lewis. Now, if you have not watched the show Tiger King on Netflix, it's a very interesting show. The premise of that show is it's a lot of different big cat type people, several owners of zoos, but one in particular by the name of Joe Exotic, who had a zoo in Oklahoma. He's now in jail. Was in sort of a back and forth with a woman named Carol Baskin out of Florida who had what was called big cat rescues, where she was trying to get these animals out of circulation in these zoos and that kind of thing, and put them in these rescue pens. Well, the documentary does not paint her in a very good light. Take that as you will. It is a documentary. It's been filmed in a certain way. However, there is one episode 3, that is dedicated to the disappearance of Carol Baskin's husband, or at least his first husband, by the name of Don Lewis. It's a very curious case. There's a lot of missing pieces to it. And of course, I'm not a detective, but local law enforcement, especially down there where Big Cat Rescue is, believe that there are a bunch of pieces missing. The local sheriff down there in Wilkinson County has reopened the case. And with that reopening, Jim and Woody figured they had an intro. And so they have decided to jump in. They're working with local law enforcement. Jim actually lives right in that area. He lives in the Orlando area. Big Cat Rescue is not far from there. So they're going to be looking to see if they can't help the local sheriff out, trying to find out what happened to Carol Baskin. What happened to Don Lewis and whether or not Carol Baskin was involved. So if you haven't watched, I will say, if you haven't watched Tiger King, it is interesting. I will say also, though, it's very crude, very vulgar. So if you're not into those things, don't watch it because it's pretty intense. There's a lot going on. At any rate, so they'll be those two guys who we've had on the morning show. We did an interview with them. Excuse me, having a little trouble this morning. Weather changes always get me. We've had them on the show. They've done their live podcast here in Livingston Parish. They did it at the Literacy and Technology Center. So they're local guys. They're former Livingston Parish Sheriff's deputies. So if you haven't checked out their show, it's called Real Life, Real Crime. It's a podcast. You can catch it on most podcast platforms. It's very entertaining. It's a lot of fun. So that's what's going on with those two guys. So wanted to mix it up a little bit for you guys today. Of course, as we mentioned, Jim lives in Orlando. However, Woody still lives here in Livingston Parish. Moving on, getting into the coronavirus statistics. Yesterday was an interesting day for the state. A very tough day for those in the northeastern part of the state. There were 2 confirmed tornadoes in the Monroe area. One was an EF2, which means it had sustained winds of up to 120 miles an hour. Lots of damage going on. Of course, we're dealing with multiple declaration emergencies now, or state of emergencies, I guess you can say. And one of the difficult things that the governor brought up yesterday is it's very hard to respond as a first responder, as a politician, as, just about anybody who's trying to get involved because of COVID-19. You've got to respect the social distancing rules and that kind of thing. Monroe has had a spike in cases. They have had deaths. So have to be careful in this kind of situation. How do we get people out there to cut these trees down that have fallen? How do we deliver water safely? How do we deliver supplies where we can't put all these people in a shelter? There are a lot of questions that the governor had to answer. So, but getting into the coronavirus case, of course, he delivered his press conference from Monroe yesterday. And of course, there are 21,016 total cases in Louisiana, 884 deaths, 2,134 hospitalizations on 461 ventilators. You're looking at 108,000 total tests going on throughout the state. 122 cases in Livingston Parish. We're up to 3 deaths now of Livingston Parish residents. Mr. David Gray has found a new the family of one of the more recent victims, and here I am touching my face. It always seems to happen right here in the morning. Got to scratch the eye or something. Mr. David Gray has found out who one of the deceased is. Reached out to their family. They will be speaking to him soon. And of course, we have done 331 tests in Livingston Parish. Yesterday, during his press conference, the governor delivered a little bit of anecdotal evidence. One of the things that he said was a big thread over the Easter weekend was that people were not following the social distancing mandates and that sort of thing. He did say that he saw plenty who were, and he was happy for that, but he wants to remind folks that unless you want to see a spike in cases, this isn't over yet. The stay-at-home order still goes through April 30th. Those social distancing and mitigation efforts will probably last after that. And of course, he talked a little bit about what life will look like after April 30th, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to discuss those mitigation efforts with you. Remember to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Disinfect common surfaces at home and at work. Control your cough and sneeze with your elbow or a tissue. Don't touch your face. Stay at home if you are sick, and work from home if possible. So please remember those mitigation efforts, keeping that 6-foot distance from others in public. All of those are important. So of course, one of the things he wanted to talk about after April 30th is that testing is going to ramp up in a large way. They're looking for more tests. They want to test more people, because if we are going to start to open the economy back up again, people need to know if they have it or not, because a lot of people have it and are asymptomatic. Last thing you want to do is open the economy back up and send asymptomatic people back out into the world just to spread it. So testing is going to ramp up quite a bit. Compared a little bit to South Korea, you're looking at about 510,000 tests in South Korea that were done at a pretty exponential rate. They have a total population of roughly 52 million. Now, of course, that's 1/7 of America's population. However, they shut down their economy temporarily, but of course they are right across the East China Sea from China, but they were eventually able to push right back into it and get going, mostly because they were testing people. And if you were sick, you stayed home, or if you had it, if you tested positive, you stayed home. That will be one of the things that the governor is going to be looking for, is to get more testing kits into Louisiana in an effort to try to keep track of everybody who has it. So as we do try to get back to work after that April 30th date, if in fact we can keep this thing under control over the next 2 weeks, again, he said he was pleased with the numbers, that they are not growing as fast as they used to. We've even had dips in some hospitalization and ventilator numbers day over the past few days. However, one of the things that the governor did want to remind folks is not to get caught up in too much in the day-to-day increases. We're more looking for trends and data over time as opposed to day-to-day increases, especially with the cases as they were 2 weeks ago and last week, especially early last week. A lot of times those were tests that had been done a week before and had just broken through and that kind of thing. So looking for trends in data as we get closer to April 30th. One of the things the governor reminded folks of outside of the testing is that things aren't necessarily going to just reopen. It's going to be a process. The president reiterated that Monday and last week. He'll be forming another task force that will deal with reopening the economy and sort of having a strategy surrounding that. The governor said that he'd be matching that locally and would have his own task force that would be discussing how exactly to implement a lot of this testing and to get the economy back going. But right now, the governor is still optimistic that April 30th date should be the time when things start to shift in a different direction. And hopefully that's a positive direction, but that remains to be seen. It's reliant on people staying home, practicing those mitigation efforts, doing the right thing. One of the other testing issues that will come up will be immunity tests and antibody tests. Of course, LSU Health System. Let me try that again. That was a long L. The LSU Health System is going to be participating in a nationwide study trying to get a vaccine produced for COVID-19. A lot of we're going to be looking for antibodies in folks, trying to get, remove those, not forcefully or anything like that crazy, but, trying to get samples of those so that a vaccine can be created so that the life that we feel is normal, that what we had before COVID-19 started to spread pretty rampantly, especially in quote unquote hot spots. And we'll talk about those in a second. Throughout the nation, that's sort of normal. As of right now, until we've talked about it before, until that vaccine is ready or there's some sort of absolutely tried and true method of treatment that'll keep people, for the most part, from dying, that'll reduce that 1 to 3% death rate to more like the flu, maybe 0.1, 0.2%. You're going to be looking at social distancing and mitigation for a while. That was one thing that the governor reiterated yesterday. And of course, he did say that Louisiana is a hot spot, much like Los Angeles, New York, state of Washington. These places are hot spots throughout the country. And, that means that you've had a rapid increase in cases and you've had to deal with them as best as you can. And of course, we've seen good trends over the last week or so. So we need to keep those trends going. The governor talked yesterday about schools. Of course, last week we discussed this. It's sort of a slow process. There's a lot of logistical issues with it. But both the superintendents, not administration, but their association, as well as the Bessie board, sent a recommendation to the governor saying, if these mitigation efforts are going to stay through April 30th, if we've waived our responsibility testing and that sort of thing at the end of the year, there's no reason to send, several 100,000 kids and tens of thousands of school workers back to work only to just have this, to pack them all back into schools only to just have this spread again, especially through, such a mobile population. So one of the things the governor said yesterday at his press conference is he anticipates a proclamation today or tomorrow that will state that schools will no longer be meeting at campus for this year. Now, he did say, and he was very specific about this, that he did expect distance learning to continue at the school systems that had employed it. Those that had not, he said, would be working through how to finalize the school year. However, that remains for Livingston Parish schools, which have implemented distance learning standards. It will be interesting to see what the school system at a local level determines how they want to move forward. Of course, a lot of that will depend on how the proclamation reads. So we haven't gotten a whole lot from the school system here in Livingston Parish just yet, because they are waiting for that proclamation to come through. They have plans in place already, but they may change because of what the proclamation says. So we'll be staying on top of that. waiting for the governor to release that proclamation, and of course then we will get that information out to you guys. But as of now, while the proclamation is not official, the governor did say yesterday that kids will not be returning to physical school. They will not be returning to campus this school year. So that effectively ends it for a lot of kids here in Livingston Parish. It'll be interesting to see how that distance learning continues. On April 15th, the IRS is going to open up a portal on irs.gov, which is going to allow folks to track their stimulus checks if they did indeed apply for a check to get their tax return. If you do have a bank account on file and receive a direct deposit, you can't track your stimulus check. They're just going to put it in there. However, if you did request a check, there will be a portal that will allow you to track it. Again, that's at irs.gov. Also, it opens April 15th. The Chamber, Livingston Parish Chamber, has their own dashboard on their website. Once you click on lpchamber.org, it's right down there about halfway. It says, click here for COVID-19 resources, and it has a lot of information, statewide, federal, that sort of thing. Works through the CARES Act. You can check that out. It is a piggyback on the Baton Rouge Chamber, which has a similar dashboard, and they're both working in tandem to try to get information to businesses. Right now, it's very frustrating for a lot of businesses who applied, especially for the Paycheck Protection Program. The application is very cumbersome. It continues to change. A lot of people still trying to get their money, still trying to stay afloat. Of course, there are problems, as there are with any government program, including one that was mentioned yesterday to me, that the loan funds have to be spent 70% on payroll. And for a lot of folks that employ, a lot of labor type workers, it's more lucrative for them to stay on unemployment. So it becomes very hard to get them to come back to work and meet that 70% threshold. So it's going to be interesting to see how the government works through that issue that's been brought up by several business owners. Tonight, the city of Denham Springs has kind of shifted gears. They are going to meet via Zoom, much like the parish council did and the school board did, trying to find a digital medium. There was some important business that must be taken care of. One of the things that the mayor wanted to reiterate is that the rezoning of Angel Concrete, or Delta Concrete, if you will, is not on the agenda. They are postponing that indefinitely until the council can meet again. They are meeting via Zoom to take care of some financial needs and that sort of thing to make sure that the business of the city keeps running. So that'll be tonight at 6 p.m. You can email cityclerk@cityofdenhamsprings.com if you'd like an invite to check out that meeting. It starts at 6 as mentioned. 15,000 meals to you through the Livingston Parish school system were delivered yesterday. Once they shut down campuses, the school board tried to shift their nutrition program to more of a delivery service, since those to-go lines at the schools could not continue to function. As of yesterday, 15,000 meals were delivered, as mentioned. If you did not get your meal, they invite you to call the school board, let them know, where you live, your name, and whether or not you received it, and they will work on ironing out those logistics for the next couple of weeks after you deliver that information. Exxon Mobile announced yesterday that they are donating fuel to first responders. They are also donating gift cards to healthcare workers. There was several $1 million worth of fuel used by first responders in the Baton Rouge area, especially in late March and early April. So Exxon's going to be helping out with that. One last time, let's go through those mitigation efforts again. One, real quick, wash your hands for 20 seconds or more. Disinfect common surfaces at home and at the office. Control your cough with your elbow or with a tissue that you're sneezing as well. Don't touch your face. Keep 6 feet of distance or more between you and anybody else, especially in public areas. Stay home if you're sick. and work from home if at all possible. And of course, if you have to stay home if you're sick, utilize telehealth to get in touch with your doctor. One last time with the cases, 21,016 coronavirus cases in Louisiana that are confirmed on 108,000 tests, 884 deaths, 2,134 hospitalizations on 461 ventilators, 122 cases in Livingston Parish, 3 deaths, 331 tests. Want to remind you that your traffic is relatively normal today, looking at delays at 4-H Club Road, River Road, and 190. You're also looking at delays at Range Avenue and 190, as well as Jubin Road and 190. Weather today, it's currently 52 degrees. 72 degrees is your high, 47 degrees your overnight low. Kind of dreary this morning, going to make way for sun this afternoon. One last time, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us this morning for the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. Please remember you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays. We do have a free page with all this coronavirus information, www.livingstonparishnews.com/coronavirus. And please remember that you get one edition in the mail for print every Thursday at $7 a month. Sometimes you get 5 editions. So we'd appreciate your subscription. We hope you have a great day. Please remember to practice those mitigation efforts. Please remember to stay safe. It's up to you to keep this trend going where we're flattening the curve. And on April 30th, we can start to make a transition to getting this economy back open. We will see you tomorrow in the booth.